I don't believe there are any evil people in the world. Now, this isn't to say that bad things don't happen to people or that people don't do things that are wrong or possibly considered evil, just that the people themselves are not evil. So while I know this is a controversial topic, it is one that I think is worth discussing, particularly because I am a person who says you should believe in things because they benefit you. And I personally don't believe that the thinking that evil is in the world is beneficial, let alone that people are inherently evil. And you can disagree with me, and I would love to hear your opinion. You can just leave it in the comments. But all things considered, I think this idea of inherent evil has to be wrong. And the reason for this is because nothing stays the same ever. That's pretty much one of the guarantees of life, change. And while there are certain things that do seem to be permanent, for example, you're born female and you will always be female biologically speaking, even if you get the surgery, because your body still functions the way that a female will. So unless you do something to like intentionally force your body to do what it's not supposed to do, you are inherently female. However, evil or behaviors that are considered evil are not something static like gender. They're not something that is forever permanent. You are not stuck just doing only positive things or only negative things. This is where the idea of free will comes in. So when somebody says that there are people who are born evil, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's possible. Instead, I think people are born neutral and then they choose or are raised to behave in some particular way. Now, we don't necessarily know what behaviors or actions lead to particular results. For example, my children behave in ways that I certainly don't do myself. My daughter, my oldest, she's very much a cleaner. She likes to have a clean environment. She likes to wash her hands. And I'm a little worried about the OCD aspect of that, but that is not something my husband or I care about very much at all. Now, yes, I do like to stay fairly clean and hygienic, but I don't necessarily like to do dishes. I don't necessarily like to keep a clean house. I'm not particularly worried about messes. So the fact that my daughter is like this is kind of like, I don't know how she got that way. Now you could say that's an inherent behavior, but you can shape that behavior in any number of ways. And she may or may not be like that in the future. So the same would be applied to evil behaviors. And I would say all children to a certain extent have evil behaviors. So let's start first with the definition of evil. What is evil? And I would say the base definition of evil that I would use is getting something that you want at the expense of somebody else, or not caring about anybody else as you pursue your goals. This is kind of the basic idea behind sociopaths or psychopaths, who I also believe are created, by the way. And we can go into that in a future video too. But this definition of evil, I think, is fairly accurate. If you look at the general concept of the devil, for example, what's he trying to do? He's trying to get you to do things without considering other people's perspectives, opinions, needs, or desires. He's basically saying, do what you want, don't care what anybody else is doing. Now, some people believe that evil behavior is more, I don't know, personal than that, where people are intentionally going out into the world trying to hurt other people's feelings. And I just don't understand how that can be a thing, because it takes so much energy to worry about other people. It really does. It takes so much energy to worry about other people. So if you're going out into the world intentionally trying to hurt somebody, my guess is you are deeply hurting. You have a reason behind that desire. It is not something that you just do by instinct or by default. So when it comes to evil behaviors, this definition of going after what you want at the expense of others, I think is pretty much perfect. And there are degrees to which that can happen, but I do think this is a good starting place. So children are evil in that they pretty much don't care what you want or what you need. They are very, very self-focused, and this is not necessarily a bad thing. They are doing what they need to do in order to survive, and we can understand that. However, if they grow up and continue to behave that way, it is now a counterproductive behavior, or an evil behavior now, because they are consciously aware that something else is available as an option. And I would say that's where evil really comes in, is with the conscious aspect. If you're aware that there is another way to go about it, that's what makes it evil. If you're unaware that there's another way, it can't really be evil because you don't see another path. So that leads to some issues as well. but let's not dive into that bit right now. So what happens when you do something that other people think is evil or bad? You're ostracized from the group. That's generally what happens. You kill somebody, people aren't going to like you. They're going to lock you away in jail, and they're going to be like, that was not good behavior. How dare you do that? That was inappropriate. That's what we do as a society. So anytime that you do a behavior that is evil or bad or counterproductive to the group, you become ostracized in some fashion. Now, whether that means banished from society entirely, punished in some fashion, or just chastised, all of those things are kind of reflections of this bad behavior or this evil behavior. So when people do things that we consider are evil, it's actually counterproductive to their survival in the group. The group will turn against them. So generally speaking, it is not smart at all to do evil things. But the reason people do evil things, or the reason people do bad things, is because they don't believe there is another path. So this is very similar to children. And this is why I say there are no evil people. These people literally aren't aware that there is a better path. They don't think, or they don't believe that another path will get them what they want. So somebody who decides to go out and sell drugs, for example, they think that is the best path to get what they want. That is the best path to wealth. But we all know building a business is difficult no matter what you go into. And in fact, building a drug business is harder than building other businesses, because now you have to confront the law. You have people chasing after you, trying to prevent you from doing this thing. So these people who are in this industry, who are selling drugs to people outside the law, are doing it primarily because that's the environment that they're being raised in. That's the environment that they're exposed to, and that's the only path they can see forward. They don't have more people inputting information saying, hey, this is better. This is better for you. This is better for society. And overall, you're going to be happier following this path. Instead, they just kind of have to stick with what they know. And I would say that's 99% of all evil behaviors. The other 1% would be people reacting to things. And I would say that's where the bigger talked about issues come in. So if you talk about pedophilia or rape or murder, that's more of like a control issue. And when it comes to the control aspect, I would say there is a certain level of I can't get what I want any other way. But there's also this thought that I feel out of control and therefore I need to control somebody else. So something likely happened in their life. Either they were raped or they were molested or they were hurt in some fashion, and now they're retaliating out. But they can't confront the individual who caused this issue, so instead they have to take it out on somebody else. And that's where this idea of attacking innocence, I think, happens more often than not. Hurt people. That's a general concept that comes out. So if somebody's hurting, they're more likely to hurt somebody else. This is why abuse is generally passed down from generation to generation, because they haven't learned how to break the cycle. They haven't learned how to stop the interaction. So we need to have mechanisms for teaching people how to live a different way, and that's ultimately how we change things. So if somebody's feeling out of control, they try to assert control in whatever way. One of the easiest ways to do that is with children. Children are much easier to control than adults. They have a harder time fighting back. They're smaller. So it makes sense that pedophilia is one of the ways in which people do that. And it's horrible. It's heinous. That should not be happening in a functional society, which indicates that our society is not functioning. But when somebody feels out of control, they will try to find a way to assert control. When somebody is in control, when somebody has power, they have no need to do this. So even though we have people in high power positions from the eyes of society, we can tell these people do not feel in control because they are constantly looking for ways to validate their power. They're constantly looking for ways to tell people or to show people how much power they have, which means they don't actually believe that they have power. When you believe something inherently, there's no need to rebel against it. There's no reason to fight for proof of that. Arrogance is the same thing. You know, a lot of people look at arrogant people and they're like, oh, they're just so arrogant. They're inherently just think so highly of themselves. And I'm like, no, if you think highly of yourself, why do you need anybody else to think anything? You already believe in your value. There is no need for external validation. So being arrogant is actually insecurity by a more flamboyant name. Being insecure is actually the fundamental part of arrogance. And this is something that's not often discussed. So we have people like Teal Swan who says the fundamental issue with humanity is loneliness. And I tend to think the fundamental issue of humanity is insecurity. We don't believe that we have the power, the ability, the control, the deservingness, the worth to get what we want, to have what we want. And the proof that we have, or the proof that we need to do this, is essentially we don't have what we want. That's all it takes. So if you don't have what you want, you don't feel like you deserve what you want, and therefore you try to find reasons to prove to everybody that you deserve it so that you can get it. And that's not actually the way that it functions. But that is the natural reaction when you feel like you're not getting what you want. You try any way you can to get what you want. So this is what evil behavior is. It's people who have not learned another way to approach getting the things that they want. And the reality is, if you want to get something, going about it in a selfless way is one of the best ways to get there. But believing that's one of the best ways to get there is one of the hardest things to actually teach somebody, because you have to evolve as an individual far beyond your natural desire to reach that conclusion. So it is a very, very long road. And that's one of the reasons why I say that, generally speaking, more therapists or more life coaches or more people helping us develop our psyches and helping us to process through our emotions are going to make a bigger difference on society than more policies or different politicians or even businesses. Because ultimately, helping people move past their basal desire or their basal training is actually going to serve the best function in our society. So no, I don't believe there are evil people. I believe that there are people who are short-sighted and do evil things because they don't believe there is a better path. And that is exactly why they do the things that they do.